Welcome back again to Marketing Careers Uncovered. Thanks to everyone listening so far and all the great people across the industry wanting to get involved. We're now having to up the ante and come at you not every month, but every fortnight now. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up to date on upcoming episodes. Taking a slightly different turn today, as I have two guests today, and both of them hail from the world of marketing recruitment. So I'm joined today by Sarah Daniels and Carly Rowe from Macildowie, a recruitment and retention firm, and we'll be spending today having just a little bit of a rummage behind the scenes of the murky world of marketing recruitment, what they're hearing from employers on the ground, and actually fundamentally how we can keep pace as marketers with what businesses are expecting from us and how we can start to think about our careers in the future. So I think we can definitely expect the letters A and I to crop up at some point throughout the conversation. So just to get us started, it'd be really helpful just to understand from both of you, Sarah and Carly, what you're up to right now. So Carly, why don't you go first and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. So I have been in the recruitment industry for the last 2.5 years now. But previously to that, I actually used to work in marketing. So I think that's probably where my interest came. So I worked in marketing for about 2 years previously. So 4 years experience within the marketing world, so to speak. And then, 2 years in each, doing, the exact roles. But because of my background, I suppose I always had an interest in recruiting for it. And in terms of what I'm up to, I think just every day doing the day job. So speaking to candidates, trying to find them their next, great role, but also trying to network as much as possible with businesses that we work with in and around the Midlands.
What about yourself, Sarah?
So I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I've been working in recruitment more years than I care to remember. I started out my career in the 90s in London, working for some of the big corporates that you probably would have heard of. And then I moved to Birmingham in 2000, where I helped set up a couple of startup agencies, had my own agency for 10 years, and I joined Macildowie 8 weeks ago, so not long ago. But pretty much all my career, I've been involved in marketing recruitment, and for the last few years of those, it's been at the sort of senior leadership exec level, having some really interesting conversations there, which I can probably go into in a while. But yeah, that's kind of me. But I mean, I joined Macildowie because I've known of them for a really long time through my sister, because she works there, and I know the chief exec as well. They've just always had such a good reputation for what they do. They've got a really strong employee value proposition. They do things really well, and they just they're a purpose-led organisation. They just genuinely care about. We genuinely care about what we do, which makes all the difference, really. So yeah.
Yeah, that counts for a lot, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Carly, I'm quite interested in your So you've gone from a role into marketing and now recruiting talent. What was it that turned your head to recruiting as a career choice?
I think all recruiters, I don't know if this is the same with Sarah, but most recruiters tend to fall into the industry. And it is a case of you don't come out of, you don't graduate and think I want to become a recruiter. It's something that naturally happens if you've got the skill set. So for me, I was made redundant I was like a marketing assistant, marketing account manager role for an agency that specialised in the hospitality industry. So I did a lot of marketing for retail and marketing for hospitality businesses up and down the UK. And it was just after COVID. So it was 2021 or the end of 2020, I think it was actually. And I was just applying for jobs, and it was account manager jobs because I was, I am a people person and I really like dealing with people. And I was just very much looking for a role where I could utilise my marketing skills and also, managing accounts. And it was a recruiter that recruited recruiters that ended up getting in touch with me. So in our industry, it's called a rec to rec. And he basically rang me about a role and said, I don't actually think this is the right role for you, but have you thought about joining recruitment? And I said, well, not really. And then we were on the phone for about 2 hours, and he got me a couple of interviews. and then the rest is history.
Yeah, I don't recall recruitment ever being on any of the careers forms or anything at school, really.
It definitely is more so these days, because I do, a lot of young people going into recruitment, have chosen to make that move. But definitely echoing what Carly said, I certainly fell into it. I registered with an agency looking for work, and I thought, oh, I could do this. And I ended up approaching not Reed Accountancy. Yes, I did. Sorry, I approached Reed Accountancy. Ended up doing finance recruitment for the first 6 or 7 years of my career. And then got into marketing in 2004, I think it was. And then never looked back. But I think that was because I'm sure you'd probably agree with me, Carly, but I think what I love about marketing recruitment is that you're speaking to some really clever, innovative people. And I think quite early on as well, I spoke to someone who's quite high up at Boots, who had been responsible for the loyalty card, the Boots Advantage card. And I just loved that, because in marketing, you're talking to people who are responsible for campaigns and stuff, or brands that you yourself, have an affiliation with or like or love, So it was just immediately just more interesting. And it's that combination of art and science. And it's so broad as well. So there's just so much to it. Much more so than finance or IT, no disrespect to.
Well, I think you can have some far more interesting conversations with a marketer than a systems analyst. Sorry to any systems analysts listening, do not send me hate mail. So that's really interesting. And now I've got you both here in the hot seat. I'd really like to take that opportunity just to have a little look behind the curtain a little, because most of us, at some point in our career, have dealt with recruiters as a candidate, or in some cases, I've dealt with recruiters as a hiring manager. But what's often quite unclear, I think this is possibly where a lot of recruiters get a fair bit of stick on LinkedIn and various other places. I'm sure you've seen the mudslinging. What actually goes on behind the scenes, and what's a recruiter bringing to the table for both parties?
Funnily enough, I was having that exact conversation with somebody earlier on today, and it is a really good question, because I know a lot of people think what we do is really easy, but it isn't. There's a huge amount of resource and work that goes into what we do on both sides. So I suppose before you've even got a brief that you're working on, a big part of what we do is obviously business development. So that can take the form of lots of different things. I go to a lot of different networking events. I'm part of several networking, groups and committees that are online and offline. You've obviously attended one of our events, Deb. We host events and webinars. I can have 6 hours worth of Teams meetings, daily work, and we're talking day in, day out to candidates and, prospective clients. Then there's all the administration side of that goes with all that. And then when you've got a brief, we don't have candidates sitting on databases. Gone are the days for that. We'll map out the entire market for a client, which is, can be very time consuming. It can take 2 weeks, to do it properly. And on the candidate side, it's all about developing relationships with them, giving them free careers advice, interview advice, counselling in lots of cases, sort of hand holding from start to finish. So the whole process is very involved and detailed, which is, and because we take great pride in what we do, both Carly and I do, and we're very good at what we do. So when we do sort of get a bad rap, it can be quite galling, but then there are lots of bad recruiters out there, to be fair, that give the rest of us a bad name.
I think as a recruiter, we have to wear a lot of different hats. So Sarah touched on something there, being a bit of a counsellor. And it is taking the good with the bad, because I think often people forget that we are the middleman in the whole hiring process. If a business is using a recruiter, we are there to help the candidate just as much as we are the client. So yes, we are working on behalf of the business, but we are also working with that candidate, because if that candidate doesn't get the role, we obviously have built a relationship with them and we want to help them find their next role. Because I think a lot of the time we'll get a bad reputation for the sense of it's all about the fee. And I've heard so many people say, oh, you recruiters, you're just the same as estate agents, you'll do anything to get a fee. And it's actually not like that, because it's not in our interest to build a bad reputation, because especially within marketing recruitment, but also within recruitment as a whole, reputation is everything. So if we are those recruiters that will just throw anything at everything and hope something sticks, that isn't going to make us market leaders. That's just going to make us like every other recruiter. And there are so many recruitment agencies across the UK now, one-man bands, sort of people that are setting up on their own. There's even sort of recruitment agencies out there that fund self-starting recruiters to set up on their own now, so that you can just recruit for yourself from your house. There's so many different areas. And I think it's just, we do get a bad name. And I think what we try and do at Macildowie, especially with me and Sarah, with our candidates and our clients, we treat them the same. So nobody gets the preferential treatment. The relationship on both sides is just as important.
Yeah, I do think for the whole for the whole sector, I think recruitment generally probably needs to do a little bit of a better job marketing itself in terms of all of the stuff you've just mentioned behind the scenes. You can forgive people for thinking, well, you've just got a big spreadsheet and an Outlook account, right? How hard can it be? You've clearly demonstrated that there's a lot of thought and effort that goes that goes behind that. Because it's not a protected industry. I mean, I could turn up with a bunch of names and set up an email account and call myself a recruiter tomorrow, couldn't I?
You could, but there's also a lot that goes into it. So the compliance side of things, we can't. There's a lot of businesses that don't do it this way. And I think between me and Sarah, at some point in our careers, we've probably worked with a few. But majority of the businesses that recruiters work for, we have to go through a compliance process. So we have to do the ID checks, the digital processes. And that's the other thing that nobody thinks of. We also have to do all of that side of things. We have to do credit control. We have to wear so many different hats, as well as, I think, gone are the days where the actual job is recruiting. So headhunting talent, that is what the crux of our job is. But that is actually only a part of it. And gone are the days where you can fill a job through posting a LinkedIn advert. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I find it really, really interesting, some of that career advice piece. I was fortunate enough to attend your first Macildowie marketing forum on branding. Now, I don't know if you'd caught me at the start of my career. Recruiters weren't doing any of that sort of stuff. There was no opening the doors, getting interesting speakers, building a community. So you're finding that's quite an important aspect now of the work you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the other thing that we tend to do is like a lot of, because I focus more on the junior to mid-market. So you're more up to your marketing manager level type roles, and then obviously support Sarah and Nav where they need it with some sort of support with recruiting their sort of exec and senior levels. But especially with my candidates, they're not CV writers. And that's one thing that you have to remember. So I do a lot of support with that, and, working on teams and jumping on with them and saying, look, I think you should do this. And it's not about sort of pointing the finger and saying you've done this wrong, but it's actually about being able to advise them on what they're doing wrong and why that's hindering their job search. And that's something that, we don't get paid to do that. That's a free service that we do to try and help them. And I think Macildowie are really good at that, because even when, I think it was the recession and also in COVID, they ran free LinkedIn workshops because nobody was wanting to recruit back then, because there was no jobs to be filled. But what they did was run LinkedIn workshops for businesses to educate their staff and educate the whole workforce on how to use LinkedIn to build your brand and also to hire. And again, that could have sort of done us out of jobs. So I think it proves our ethos as a business and sort of how me and Sarah operate, that it's not just a money orientated approach. It's actually to get the best out of everybody, whether that be through the people that we're helping to find work or the businesses we're helping to recruit for.
Yeah, and it's the same at the senior end of the market as well. You can't just assume that people at the senior end, also don't need help. I've seen some I speak to lots of people who need help with their CVs, and how to present it in the best possible light, how to create, a beautifully crafted, tailored covering letter. I mean, I'm constantly recommending different sort of methods of how to get your name out there to people, to this, even the senior end of the market. So yeah, Colin's right. It is an ongoing thing. And another thing that Macildowie did as well, which was during COVID, was set up a NED advisory network, because they had a lot of business owners coming to them who were kind of fed up with the sort of corporate world. I mean, I think COVID changed a lot of people's priorities. So they're fed up with the corporate world and wanted to give something back. So Macildowie set up this NED advisory network, which is a free community for NEDs, basically, to be able to network with each other, share events, share important information. And the only thing that we ask in return is just to bear us in mind if you hear of any, sort of exec roles or roles in the industries, that you're involved in. So yeah, I mean, they've really, kind of gone above and beyond to constantly evolve, whether it's in that way or with new technologies and all that sort of thing to keep ahead of the curve, but to be able to, really add that value.
We've established that you're pretty plugged in with employers and conversely the talent pool of marketers out there. In your view, what's setting apart good marketers from the great in the sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my world, which again is obviously the junior to mid-level market, a lot of the time it's portfolios, because what a lot of hiring managers are saying now is that most marketing CVs look the same. And you're right, Dave, because AI is going to get mentioned here. AI is everyone's best friend, and especially with CVs, I speak to candidates all the time who use AI to create their CVs, which is absolutely fine. But it's about using that tool in the right way and being able to use it in sort of collaboration with your skill set rather than letting it do the work for you. So what I always say to candidates is the portfolio is what sets you apart from other sort of marketers that are looking for their next role, because that's where the hiring managers are going to really see your skill set, whether that be on a link that's on your CV or a QR code or it's embedded in your CV. That's where you're really going to show off your skills. And I think the marketers that aren't providing a portfolio or at least 3 or 4 different examples of their work are the ones that are struggling at the minute to get into roles, because it is a really competitive market, especially with marketers. There are far more candidates than there are roles. So the competition is high. And when I'm working on a role and I'm supporting my candidates, I'm always saying to them, if they've got to that final stage, do something different. So recently that's been a SWOT analysis. In another role, that's create a social post to take with you to show that you've got that skill set.
Tangible stuff, isn't it, here?
Yeah, and that's not that they've been asked to do that. The hiring managers haven't said it. I just think, and I know my clients, but at the same time, I know the industry. And a candidate that's gone in and used their initiative and thought, right, let me do this to try and get ahead of the game is going to get far more success than somebody who just goes in, takes their CV and discusses their skill set.
And is that washing the same at the senior end of the scale? So I can imagine that being quite a differentiator, at the junior and even sort of mid level. But do you have to play a little bit of a different game, Sarah?
Well, I mean, in terms of kind of what makes you stand out, the difference between a good marketeer, and a great marketeer. And I've been thinking about this for the last sort of couple of days and asking some of my clients this as well, actually. I do think it goes back to that whole sort of art science combination. So it's somebody who's got, the creative vision and the storytelling ability, as well as somebody who's all over the data, the numbers, and importantly can leverage data to inform decisions, and be able to demonstrate that, on a CV as well. because that's obviously the first perception that any recruiter or future employer is going to have of you, but also to be able to demonstrate that, to be able to articulate that. And it's also got to be somebody who's, really customer obsessed and has a deep understanding of the audience. Because if you don't know who your customers are, you're just selling products or services blindly, aren't you? And just hoping for the best. And you've also got to have amazing communication skills and the courage of your own convictions. Because often because marketing is a spend versus finance, say, whose job is there to protect the revenue. In my view, marketing is there to drive and grow revenue, but it's seen as a cost, isn't it? So even if you're really good at what you do, you've got to be able to have the courage of your convictions, and be able to hold your ground in a senior leadership setting or at board level when you're up against people who are probably, they're not marketeers, but they're more wanting to protect the revenue, as I've said, from a finance perspective.
It's a real fine balance, though, isn't it? That the whole pendulum between being collaborative and working with the business and not just doing marketing to the business, but also standing firm and going, well, actually, this is the course that we need to take. I know I've fallen too far on one side to the other from throughout my career.
Yeah, because everybody is an expert in marketing, aren't they? Everybody thinks they know what marketing is, and is all too ready to tell you, well, I think we should do this, I think we should do that, whereas, a marketeer, you, Dave, for example, you're not going to go and tell the finance director, well, actually, I think you should be doing this, because you'll let him, it's like stay in your lane. You're not.
I'd have a crack, but he told me to piss off, and frankly,
yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
so,
but I get your point. We wouldn't do the same. We wouldn't do the same in a marketing space. There's almost a sort of natural subservience that's sort of seeped into just marketing as a whole. That I think we just need to get ourselves off a little bit.
Yeah, because marketing is often seen as serving sales, isn't it? And it's not. The two need to be working side by side, and it obviously supports the sales process. But I mean, Dave, what's it like in your organisation? How do you find things?
So I've worked in consulting backgrounds for the last sort of 7-8 years or so, and I've always found them to be quite naturally collaborative environments. I think it's the people that you tend to work with are quite commercially minded, creative, so quite natural allies to marketing. But I have worked in I have worked in firms where the CEO has thought, well, marketing is there to colour in and be sales support, and sometimes some of that some of those attitudes can really come down from the top. And I've found you can spend lots of time and energy trying to shift and change a culture of an organisation, but sometimes you just have to go, do you know what? If your view of marketing does not align with mine, I'm not going to spend the next 3 to 5 years driving myself into a ditch to change that. Actually, I'll go and join an organisation that does align with my values and the way I work and collaborate with others. Because you can get too caught up in it's my problem to fix an organisation, and it's not.
No, you're absolutely right there. Yeah, definitely.
So, what are the other things that I've seen around the going around the interwebs at the moment is this whole notion that attitude completely trumps aptitude. I've seen LinkedIn posts of people going, I came across a candidate that had zero experience, couldn't tie the shoelaces, didn't know their ABCs, but I hired him as senior account manager, and it's all great because I hire for attitude. Yeah, but I'm quite conscious that whilst attitude is a really important part of the part of the mix, it's not just the case that with the right mindset, everything else will fall into place. But how are employers seen? Are employers actually and businesses far more practically minded? Well, actually, I do need some bloody hard skills here. Or are you starting to see attitude rise to the top of the pile?
I think it depends on the level, and I think it depends on the person that's hiring. There are so many clients out there that are attitude focused, and if there's somebody with a year's experience in marketing, but they have got the proof is in the pudding, they've got a creative portfolio, they can show that they can do the job, and they've got that eagerness to learn. There are businesses out there that will want to train and upskill and look after and really nurture that person. But then it depends on the needs of the business, because there are also businesses out there that would probably love to do that and hire for attitude and sort of skill second, but they have a need within their team that has to be fulfilled. So I think if employers are honest, they would all like to hire for attitude, because everybody needs to have that positive attitude. But at the same time, attitude doesn't always meet the sort of ROI requirements that, you know, marketing departments have, or targets, or a lot of expectation from especially sort of board level, maybe whether that's investors or chief execs. I think it just depends on the actual client that's hiring.
So that's something to really figure out as a as a candidate. Yeah, if you're looking at a prospective organisation, figure out how quickly do you need me to hit the ground running, and have that honest conversation, and not get caught up in this whole performance of, yes, I'm absolutely brilliant, don't worry, it'll all be fine, and really get down to those facts, right?
I think that's where we come in, because we have to be really consultative with our approach. There are so many candidates that I will speak to for roles that I'm recruiting for that, they probably could do the role, but I know that the business I'm recruiting for, they're not going to fit that right mold, because they've not got 2 or 3 levels of years of experience. So I have to have those conversations. So 9 times out of 10, they won't get to that interview stage, because I'll have been really honest with them, because our job is to also make sure that their best interests are looked after. And we don't want them to be going into, a race where they're already, they're going to come last compared to somebody else.
From my time as a hiring manager, actually, the amount of conversations I had with recruiters going, don't send me 10 candidates where, 8 are padding the deck and 2 are actually brilliant. Just send me, if you've just got 2 good candidates, send me 2 good candidates who are a good fit. So it was always quality over quantity for me.
Yeah. I think that's the way that we work as well. And I think Sarah and me, we both work very similarly in the sense that we will tend to benchmark. So we will always present a wild card in our shortlist, but it's normally the one wild card rather than 5 wild cards and 2 that are quality. We tend to sort of match to the spec as much as possible, maybe present somebody that's a little bit more expensive, a little bit more junior, and a wild card, as well as the ones that are dead on. But again, you just adjust to client requirements and client needs.
Attitude obviously is extremely important. Culture fit's really important, and I don't think, and companies won't hire on skill sets alone in the roles that I deal with. There's got to be a person who fits the culture, and often they've turned down somebody who, yes, okay, they can do the job, but they won't fit the team. But equally, even if they're a brilliant personality fit, if they haven't got the absolute non-negotiable skills to do the job, they won't be hired either. But in the case of, where there is that ability to have that learning curve, situation in place, if a company has taken 6 months to find somebody, they'd be mad not to hire somebody just, looking for that perfect candidate, because in that 6 months you could have trained somebody up to do the job, and that's often conversations I'll have with clients, because they haven't actually thought about that. Attitude can't be trained, really, can it? Skill sets can be trained, but it's the areas that separating the non-negotiables from the negotiables.
Yeah, you can bend it to an extent, but if I'm going to be a pain in the arse, then I'll probably always be a pain in the arse, won't I? To some extent, I might be able to mask some elements of it, but not for long, and probably not very well. You both got a really good viewpoint here of candidates looking for their next move. I'm really interested in your views from that, in terms of what are driving people to call time on particular roles or employers and look for their next move, and actually what can businesses be doing better to retain talent?
Yeah, I mean, there can be lots of reasons, but a lot of the time does boil down to poor management and leadership, definitely, and a toxic culture. Also employees not feeling valued, hitting a glass ceiling. It's not all about salary for, I'd probably say, the majority of people, but employees need to feel cared about. They need to feel supported. There also needs to be flexibility. I think gone are the days where, oh God, even not going back that far, are we? Pre-COVID, where you went to work and, you went 5 days a week in a sort of cubicle and you had to be grateful you got a job. These days, employers have to take into consideration their employees' mental and physical, well-being. And post-COVID, that has really changed things for the better. I'm seeing a lot of big corporates, a couple of law firms actually, put in place some really good, implement some really good change around things like, neurodiversity as well. Being able to cater for people who, are very sensitive to noise and lots of people and all that sort of thing, because before that there was nothing there for anybody. Everybody was expected to work in the exact same way, and there were no sort of allowances made for any of that. These days, thankfully, a lot of employers are getting on board with that. So, if everybody has different priorities, but if those priorities aren't being met, then if there's no room or appetite for conversations where change can be made, then that's an employee will leave at the end of the day.
Are you finding they're leaving quicker now? Because I've spoken to people over the last year or so who have gone, well, actually, I probably would have and should have left a particular role a year or so earlier than I actually did. Are you finding that candidates are getting to that realization that actually, it's called hiring for a reason. I'm not incarcerated here. I can leave. Are they coming to that conclusion much, much quicker now and giving employers less leeway?
Not necessarily. I mean, obviously it's balanced up with what the market's like as well, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, unless your situation's intolerable, candidates aren't going to want to leave a situation, be unemployed. And when it's a difficult market, there's always that risk that you're going to leave a permanent job for, be out of work for a while. So it does depend, but I think with the, new legislation coming in, I think with Labour as well, where flexible working isn't just something that can be requested, it's an actual right. So I think there's the ability to have those conversations now. What do you think, Carly? Would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that we are in a different world, and I think even graduates that are coming out of university having studied marketing, and I think clients have quite a narrow-minded view on this. So business owners, I appreciate we keep referring to clients, but to everybody else, they're going to think clients. Who are they? So when I say clients, I mean sort of business owners. But business owners, they tend to not have that understanding that a graduate might still need that flexibility just as much as somebody who's, a parent and they need to do the school run. And I think that's something that is an understanding that, slowly but surely now businesses are starting to wake up a little bit and think we need to do something differently, because hybrid is a real thing. Working remotely, although it's the roles are a lot less than they were, back in COVID times, they're still out there. And the roles that are completely office based, like you've got your companies like Boots that were hybrid, and now everybody's required to be in the office. And that was a massive thing on LinkedIn, and it blew up because they'd had to adjust, and there was people that worked for them that didn't have to travel to the office, and now all of a sudden do. So that created a massive sort of surge really in the workforce that are, based there, either looking for something new or really reassessing their situation.
Yeah, and they're going to end up, long term with, you'll get bums on seats, but are they the right bums on seats? Yeah, I remember I had an interesting altercation with a hiring manager once, who was proudly proclaiming that they did flexible working because you could you could work from home 3 days a week and be in the office 2 days a week. You've just explained hybrid working to me. That's not that's not flexible, because actually he also stipulated that the days in the office are Monday and Friday. I was like, okay, that's as far from flexible as you can possibly imagine. Like, no. What do you mean you can work from home? Like, no, we're misunderstanding some of the terminology here, and I as a candidate got absolutely exasperated and hacked off, and I imagine that's something that's playing out just completely across the sectors at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you have got candidates now that I think maybe have worked remotely, because this is the real argument I think that we have with people all the time, and not in an argument in the strongest sense of the word, but almost like a consultative conversation, because there are some candidates out there that want to work in the office, but there are also those that don't, and both views are absolutely fine. And I think we just need to continue, and this is a reason why, if you are looking for a role, working with a recruiter does work in your favor, because we can have the conversations that maybe you feel like you can't, because if there is a reason that you can't, you need to work flexibly, that you don't feel comfortable sharing an interview stage, that's where I suppose we can have those more difficult conversations. And that's another sort of circling back to one of your initial questions. I think that's something else that people don't realize that we have to do, have those really difficult conversations that maybe can be a little bit uncomfortable for the person who's got the issue.
Yeah, you can be a little bit more matter of fact as well, and go, look, if you're not going to bend on this thing, you're probably going to lose this candidate. Whereas if I rocked up an interview one and went, well, if you can't do this, and this for me, then I'm walking. Thank you very much. They're going to think, Jesus, who is this guy?
Yeah, it's down to reframing it, I think. And if you were in the interview and it can be seen as demanding, when actually, if we frame it in the right way, it's just, this is my life circumstance, and
Yeah.
this is what I would need to be able to work for you. And I think you received in two completely different ways.
Let's have a little bit of a look into the future. We've already used those dreaded letters A and I, but let's carry on that conversation. We're really starting to see tools, that are AI powered and driven, starting to make some really, really good inroads. They're kind of just, they've come out of the cradle. They're akin to a toddler now. Starting to walk and starting to really find their way in the world. So yeah, I remember when I first started my career, I really cut my teeth in marketing by doing some of the jobs right at the coalface. Some of the really the admin intensive stuff. Moving stuff around spreadsheets. Reformatting documents. Just all of the frankly, all of the stuff no one else really wanted to do, but also gave me a really good understanding of how things work, how a campaign's put together, how you get things from A to B to C between marketing and sales and operations. So what I developed is almost a bit of a sixth sense here as to when something doesn't look quite right, or something might be going awry. In this new era where you put things into these AI black boxes and stuff gets spat out that looks pretty good, how would I go about developing understanding what skills do I actually need for the future?
I I think, I mean, we run a lot of workshops here, and I think that's probably a good place to start. We have opened our first AI division, and that's something that we've tried to do to get with the current trends, and get with the workforce. And there are, I think, from recent findings, but over 50% increase in AI jobs, sorry, since obviously the trend began. So that's something that we've echoed. But what we also find is a lot of candidates, and not necessarily just in marketing, but across the board, don't really understand AI and how to use it. So we offer an upskilling course through our own channels. So that's, I think, something we've had to do to adapt, because we deal with a lot of candidates and a lot of clients that have to use it, or have had used it, or have no idea of it. So if that's the case, and we're working on a role, and that's the difference between somebody getting the role and not, then why wouldn't we try and upskill the people that we work with? But I think in terms of going into the industry, I think upskilling yourself, like I remember when I first started to understand AI, and it was when it first came about and everyone was using it to write their shopping lists and their day plans, and I was thinking, what on earth is this? And then there was this whole thing, is AI going to replace recruiters? Like, and it was a little bit of a worry at one point. And then I used it myself, and I was speaking to a candidate who, funny enough, she was a marketing manager and she'd done a AI workshop, and she came up with the sort of solution that she uses it in sort of connection to her day to day rather than to do her day to day. And I think there's something really in that. Don't use it to do things for you, use it to support yourself in whatever you're doing. So for her, she used it to help her with interviews, to help her generate interview questions based on the job spec that she was interviewing for. So that's not doing the job for her. That's not telling her what to say. That's helping her come up with questions to answer things. And I think that's the sort of skills, that's where you need to use the skills rather than using it as, to work against you.
Yeah, and you're still going to be quite critical as well. I mean, you've got to get, critical thinking is a skill that probably will never go out of fashion. The ability to look at something and go, well, actually, is that right? Where have you sourced that particular piece of information? Because I've seen lots of examples of AI, hallucinating and pulling out all sorts of gobbledygook, tying itself up into knots. And the risk is if you take some of this stuff at face value and go, well, ChatGPT told me, so it must be right. You can get yourself in a real bit of a pickle, can't you?
Yeah. And I think from my side, from a recruitment perspective, a lot of the hiring managers that I deal with, especially when they get to the task part, so a lot of, you might have had to do this yourself, Dave, when you've been looking for a role or when you've been hiring, maybe at the second or third stage, a lot of employers will now get prospective employees to do a task, whether that be sort of copywriting focused or SEO, Photoshop, any sort of key fundamental. They might ask you to create something to sort of show off your skills based on a brief. And a recent sort of situation that I had was that what the hiring manager actually said and wrote it into the brief, do not use AI because we can tell. And it's because they'd been burnt by somebody using AI for their copywriting. And you can tell.
But isn't that aren't we then sort of holding on to the old way of doing things? It's akin to, do you remember the days where you weren't allowed to use a calculator in maths exams or maths lessons at all? And now it's just become why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use a calculator? So actually going to a candidate, you can't use any of these tools, but actually would probably expect and want you reasonably to use once you're in role. Hasn't some of that mindset got to shift a bit? Going, you can't touch this stuff until you're in.
I don't know. I think it takes away personality. I don't know what you think about it, Sarah, but I think that you over reliance on AI in marketing takes the personality of the marketer out of it, and I think that's what makes a good marketer great. Seeing a lot of marketers, I think, are quite introverted in their social. Not everyone, but from admission, from speaking to them, they do find that they show their sort of extroverted side through their work. And I think if you over rely on AI, you can't do that because you're taking the personality element out of it, and you're just using everything that it's pulling from Google to write the blog for you.
Yeah, definitely. And AI is used in the right way, can massively speed up what you're doing in certain ways. It can analyze vast quantities of data, which could free a marketeer up to do something else. Even if AI is going to replace maybe certain jobs, but it's also creating loads of jobs in different areas. But you're right, that human element will never be lost, because even though you can use platforms and instruct it on your tone of voice, there are still going to be areas that you're going to have to tweak and sort of here and there. And I think it can give you a great sort of outline for something in terms of content, but that human element will never be lost. And nothing replaces you in terms of your experience, your uniqueness. But I just think, AI just needs to be harnessed in the right way, doesn't it? And it's been said loads, AI is not going to replace you, but somebody who knows how to use AI more efficiently and effectively will. So we just all need to get on board with it, basically, which is fine by me.
Yeah, you can swim you can paddle in the direction of the river, or you can spend forever and a day trying to fight the current, and you just get dragged under.
I had a conversation earlier with the MD of a business who he's a marketeer, and he told, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Dave. It's something called Meet Alfred.
No, I'm not.
It's basically a LinkedIn automation tool that enhances your sort of marketing and lead generation. It's like marketing automation, but it kind of goes one step further, because through certain steps and instructing it in certain ways, it can automatically, I'm not explaining it very well, but it can automatically do things for you on LinkedIn. And which if you did it manually, it would take you so many hours, say, but doing this automatically, he's got, sort of X number of appointments from it, business from it. He said it's absolutely incredible. So much so that I've actually looked it up today, and I'm going to do a free trial in it. So have a look at it.
I am personally convinced, I'll happily go on record for this in 10 years' time, that actually not using AI, this email was not AI generated, or will become a real differentiating factor. Probably not even 10 years from now, where everyone's, it's a bit of an arms race at the moment. Everyone's trying to get all these tools that will do everything at 10 times the 10 times the speed. And I am convinced there will be businesses and people cropping up and going, well, actually, human brain powered 100% will be quite a powerful statement to make. Yeah, we touched on some of this already. We talked about the marketing forum that you guys have kicked off at Macildowie that can help with some of that broader understanding, and just to talk to some like-minded professionals around things like brand or AI or various things. It'd be really useful for anyone listening who wants to get in on that. What kind of things are coming up? What kind of topics, and how can I get involved if I'm interested?
Yeah, so the next one will be September. We are going to be announcing a date really soon. So Nav, who is the third member of our marketing trio within the private sector, she's actually going on maternity leave. So it will be me and Sarah at the helm of the ship. So we just need to dot the I's and cross the T's, but it will be in September. We already have a guest speaker booked, and she will be addressing the topic of neurodiversity in marketing, the strengths of that, maybe potential weaknesses, and then obviously bringing that to the roundtable talk as we did with the branding episode. And then we have some other exciting things planned. We will be doing an AI one at some stage. I think we'll wait and do a few more before then, sort of make sure everyone's engrossed before sort of throwing an AI one there, because I think that will be quite controversial. And then I don't know if you've got anything to add, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sort of TBC, isn't it? I've got a few ideas. And one thing I'm currently doing quite a bit of research into at the moment, as I think I've already sort of alluded to, is why there's not more, marketing representation at board level. And it seems to be only, since the advent of digital marketing, that marketing is now seen as a more broad-worthy, function in lots of ways. So I'm having some really good conversations around that, sort of, trying to raise the profile of marketing at that level. Also, the rise of the fractional CMO. Fractional is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. That, and it actually means interim. I hadn't even heard of it before last year. I think it's a US term. Yeah, so I'll be doing something around that as well. I'd like to, the rise of the fractional CMO. I'd also quite like to produce some content, maybe have a podcast or do a webinar or whatever around the relationship between marketing and finance. I think that would be a really good one.
Well, I would definitely have you back for that conversation. That sounds very interesting and pertinent. So just to wrap us up here, then, and finally, from a personal perspective, from both of you, have you got anything next on your list? Anything you're working towards or developing in?
For me, my full focus over the next sort of 6 to 12 months will be just establishing marketing at Macildowie along with Sarah, because previously it was just Nav. So obviously I was brought in 6 months ago, and then Sarah 8 weeks ago to sort of add to that. But previously, marketing is not something Macildowie has been known for. So we are really looking to push that, educate our clients that we work with already, speak to some new clients that are really in need of either some marketing benchmarking, insights, or just hiring, and just being that real point of contact for candidates and businesses around sort of the Midlands, Leicestershire, up to sort of Milton Keynes, up north as well, to be that point of contact for marketing, as well as making the forum a real success. And if there is anyone, I think I didn't say this earlier, but if there is anyone that's interested in the forum, the best way to keep updated is follow us on LinkedIn, on the Macildowie LinkedIn page, and also check our website. But our personal profiles will be advertising the next forum date, so just keep your eyes peeled.
I will drop some links into the description as well for anyone to follow. You got a bucket list, Sarah? Anything you're keen to get your teeth into in the future?
Well, on a work front, because I'm only obviously 8 weeks in at Macildowie, so it's really doing a lot of groundwork there, and on that side of things, I will be setting up a senior marketing leaders group on LinkedIn, which can also tie into the forum quite nicely. I'm also a member of the Women in Leadership Committee in Birmingham, and we are also going to be launching a podcast over the summer, and having a launch event for that at the end of September the 28th. And also at the end of October, we're going to be holding an event around how to elevate more women into senior leadership and board roles, because not only are there not enough marketeers on boards, there's not enough women either. So yeah, that's kind of another focus for me. And going on the odd holiday as well. Got a couple of holidays planned.
Good. I feel exhausted already. Yeah, plenty to keep you to keep you all busy. Very good. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today, both. For everyone listening, if you haven't already, do subscribe to receive future episodes as they drop. And if you've enjoyed today's conversation, please do share around or leave a review as well. It's all very much appreciated. Thank you very much.